Roseanne, are you going to straight into introducing? Yeah, you might as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start and just welcome people, Karen, or you?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that. Welcome everyone for quite a few, some of you, welcome back. It's been a very long and intense day of very interesting, exciting and productive work. And this is the last session of our of this day, but of course I'm very aware that for some people this is the start of their day. So Annika has been amazing. Annika Slabbert is the research assistant of this research project, which is called the Postqualitative Research Collective project. And so yeah, what Annika has done is she has recorded all of the sessions and made them available. So for people in the different time zones, they can watch it. And also a lot of the sessions are returned to, but then the idea is that people watch the sessions and then we build on. So we deflect through and we take it somewhere else as well. So rather than it's just a repeat. But I'm just absolutely delighted, Mirka, that you have agreed when we invited you to do this slot, this session, and Roseanne has kindly agreed to introduce you. And I think you're probably going to say more about this because it's such an important part of the one very important objective of this research project, which is funded by the National Research Foundation of South Africa. And we're now at the end of the first year and we still got 2 years to go. So Roseanne Reynolds is the co-PI of this project and Viv Bozalek is the co-investigator, and I'm the PI of the project. So this is sort of a little bit about us, and I hand over to you, Roseanne.
Hi, Mirka. Hi, everyone. I'm going to read Mirka's bio, and I think this is important because we are in a space where it's important to know and understand some of the work that you've been doing, Mirka, for people who don't know about your, well, I think most people know about your work, but to get a sense of, the breadth of your scholarship, even though it's just a short paragraph. So Mirka, you is based at Arizona State University, has a PhD from the University of Helsinki. Just shake your head if anything is incorrect, or you can change. We're doing well so far. She's a professor of qualitative research at Arizona State University. Her scholarship operates in the intersection of methodology, philosophy, and socio-cultural critique, and her work aims to contribute to methodological knowledge, experimentation, and theoretical development across various traditions associated with qualitative research. She has published in various qualitative and educational journals, and she's the author of Reconceptualizing Qualitative Research Methodologies Without Methodology. That was in 2016 by Sage, and co-editor of Disrupting Data in Qualitative Inquiry, Entanglements with the Post-Critical and Post-Anthropocentric, and that was in 2017 by Peter Lang, and most recently, Intra-Public Intellectualism, Critical Qualitative Inquiry in the Academy, and that was published in 2021 by Myers Education Press. Mirka is also a mother, she's Finnish, and much, much more. And one of the much, much mores is that I've met Mirka in person, but I've met her in person, as you can imagine, through the Zoom room. And my experience of you is that quite astute, able to really pedagogically very strong in terms of teaching. I was in a seminar you did with Jane Osgood, and I'm part of the Spencer Foundation where we're trying to learn about a group of us PhD scholars at the time. I've graduated since, thank you, Mirka. Talking about, so just able to learn from you. So I think teaching is central, I think, to some of what I have experienced of you. I know that's not all that it is you do, but we're looking forward to learning from you this evening. So thank you and welcome to South Africa and to this group right now.
Thank you so much, Roseanne, for a lovely intro, and Karen and everybody for inviting me. It's exciting project that you have undertaken, and being part of it has been a really lovely for me intellectually and relationally and creatively and many other ways. So I'm just here today to help you facilitate this conversation. So I have, if I can share a screen, I have just prepared a couple of questions, just the one slide of things to start, maybe to think with. But maybe before we go to those questions, I would like to hear who you are and what is your interest in teaching online post-qual research, why you are here. So we can just do a really quick, everybody doesn't need to go, but those who wants to share, they can just say a few words. So we kind of have a sense of the land here. Jane, why you're here?
Am I muted? No, I'm not. Hello, what's my interest? The network is my interest, and research is my interest. And I think there's a real gap and a need and a hunger and a thirst for not how to do post-qualitative inquiry, but how to become with others and to explore and experiment and to get lost in not knowing, and yeah, to kind of creatively learn together, I guess, is my motivation for wanting to be involved in this in some way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Good. Hi, Carol.
Carol here.
You want to say something while you are here? How you're interested?
Muted? Am I all right now? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, all that Jane said.
Yeah.
But also the sense of, I think one of the things that has come out of my work with you, Mirka, and with Neil and Nikki and Constanza and Angelo is the sense of fun, you know, and fun and joy and conviviality are in quite sort of quite rare things actually in sort of the serious and quite desperate situations that we often find ourselves in higher education. So I'm interested in how post-qualitative, post-humanist, material feminist activations can create spaces for more fun and more joy. And I think, you know, having done a few, well, quite a few now, sort of post-qual experiments with my doctoral students, they get really nervous about this idea of fun. They think, is it proper research if it's fun? And half of my time is spent convincing them that, you know, it is. So I'm just interested in that aspect of it. And personally, I'm interested in having more fun rather than less fun.
Thanks for sharing, Carol. Anybody else wants to go? Viv, Natalia, Mary, Hillary.
Hi, I'll go. Yeah, I'm also very interested in post-qualitative research, and particularly sort of working differently with PhD students and with friends and colleagues. And as Carol says, having fun and finding pleasure,
yeah,
actually in doing the work. So yeah, and I'm interested to know, you know, how one could put such a course together. As you know, we've had this series of post-qualitative research webinars, which has been quite fun. Mm-hmm. And we've got one now on neuroatypicality in higher education, which we also enjoying very much. So yeah, I'm interested in how it could work in the online environment as a resource or whatever.
Thanks, Liv. So what I've gathered so far, so we would like to create an online course that is fun that creates activations that enables us to work together collaboratively, utilize each other's strengths and interests, do creative work together, us as instructors, but also together with our students, maybe across courses and institutions and so on. So our goal today is to set up a working group to try to do that. But I want to, before I go to my question, there's one more thing that I want to spend a little more time discussing, is the dilemma of teaching the unteachable. So if we think about post-qual work, and this is something that I face myself every time, like now I'm teaching data analysis beyond, qualitative data analysis beyond coding this semester. And those are the institutional boundaries. That's a course that is assigned me to teach. And how I teach something, for example, in this case, post-qual analysis and the multiplicity within it, in a way that students across the campus who are taking it, I have engineering students, sociology students taking, engineering educator students taking this class, that there is the sense of wonder, while at the same time there's a legitimacy, and I'm able to demonstrate in some way to the students that this is the work that is being done, even though it is crazy and it is fun and it is creative. There's a very growing number of scholars engaging in this type of work. So how to teach the unteachable, and how can we create online course, which is probably even potentially more structured than we have, the spaces that we have in the face-to-face classrooms. What are your thoughts on that? What elements, for example, we would need to build into the online course that we would have that multiplicity, flexibility, uncertainty, creativity? Karen, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I suppose it is maybe just have a conversation about the unteachable. What does that mean in terms of, because I've always felt that there are some ideas of what you should and shouldn't be doing, but it is maybe not something that you can put in kind of rules or strict guidelines, but you have definitely got a sense of, this is not what it is. So is it, it's the same with philosophy, I suppose. And when you see like concept as method or philosophy, or, that is also, you can't really teach others to think for themselves. You can't hand it out, there's no recipe for it, but you can definitely encourage it. So you can teach it. So maybe, as we do a lot in post-qual anyway, it's just like stretching, playing, walking around in the concepts themselves. And what does it mean to teach? And I suppose, of course, part of this project is also the book series. And that's what we have tried to do in the book series as well, is sticking our necks out and thinking, because that's definitely how I feel it, it is a sticking your neck out. Well, yeah, it is experimental, and it is, it's not prescribed, and it doesn't have strict guidelines, but it actually, there is something we can say about this nevertheless. I don't know, I'm just chucking this up, so maybe it is a reconfiguring of what teaching means and learning.
Yeah, and I think that how I think maybe I practice it in my own work, that I have very loose structures. So and I have maybe more provocations or stimuli And like reading, we rarely really discuss reading, like go line by line or have quizzes or none of that. But the reading is one of those, and the texts and other people's work is one of those touching points and connections that we are continuously drawing from, like examples, etc. But it is not, I am not using texts, for example, to study them. They are another form of provocation. And if let's say that I'm using Bharat's text as a provocation, it means that I have to get to know it in order to be able to use it. So, but how do I study it? I think that is up to all the students in my class, how they go about interacting with Bharat or whoever we are, who I have created in the, or inserted in the reading list.
Yeah, I love your use of provocations, and I think that's definitely that. That resonates really well with me. You know, provocations for inquiry, provocations for thinking about key concepts or binaries, provocations. Yeah, I like that.
And I would love to rethink, just like Karen, we have already started kind of discussing, rethink what teaching is in this course, so that we would have some ways to maybe restructure or rethink, like what kind of events we consider to be teaching or learning events. And then to actually see how students and our partners utilize that, and how do they experience that. And I feel like teaching post-qual is always an experiment. So in a way, I think that whatever kind of course we are creating, or series of maybe mini courses or mini events that then constitute a bigger curriculum, I think that in some way it needs to be in flux, so that we have, freedom is not the right word, but we have the degree of kind of big degree of flexibility, how we design it, but also how we implement and then modify and revise after we have started and have some experience with it. But so we have issues. So maybe I'll share the screen now. Annika, did you give me a?
Just to say, Carol had her hand up. I don't know if she wants to comment before.
Sorry, I didn't notice.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just probably reflecting back and putting into slightly different words what's already been said, but I was thinking about the words unlearning and unteaching. And it's almost as though that's what the teaching part of it has got to be. It's unlearning, you know, and unteaching the normative codes that certainly my graduates have been kind of soaked with since the moment that they entered school, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, and which is such a naturalized way of thinking. And I'm all for kind of throwing people in the deep end and challenging them and giving them lots of risks to kind of work around. So it's kind of, for me, it's how much of that we want to do and how we build that in. So that was kind of one sort of reflection back, if you like. But I was also thinking about the provocation I did for your, what's it called? Your multiverse thingy, Mirka?
Yeah.
You know, and it was so, in many ways, it was such an easy entry point, you know, what the doors do, you know, and we could just look around our institutions and, you know, what classrooms do. If you ask that question about what do things do, in many ways, it's a non-challenging way of getting into something which actually is deeply complicated. You know, so it's almost like throwing out a bit of a line and then pulling people in, and then they don't realize how deep they're in until they're actually in it up over their heads, you know. And that's to me, that's how do we as producers of this course kind of enable those moments of unlearning and learning to happen.
I think that there is something really, really interesting to think about a course, that one of the biggest objective is to unlearn inquiry, for example. And I think that if we think about post-qual or post-work, it is about unlearning normative traditions in some ways and creating that space to find another ways to relate to the world and relate to the inquiry and data and participants, etc. Because when I was thinking about what course would we develop together, what's the topic to begin with beyond post-qual research? Like where would we focus that? There is so much. And I think that if we start somewhere, either unlearning theories or unlearning inquiry strategies or unlearning researcher subjectivity or positionality in the world, I think that those are really fundamental, like key turning points when students learn to become qualitative researchers, by lack of the better word, or post-qualitative researchers.
Yeah, and can I just sort of throw in one thing that really gets to me is the quality criteria by which one evaluates one's research. Even my students who are trying to do things in post-humanism fall back into, validity, reliability, because they don't know where else to go, because I'm not entirely sure how much as a community we have even thought about those things. I know some work has gone on. So it's kind of, in their viva, they get asked the question, how do you know they've got to address the question, how do you know if your work is any good? Yeah. And they've got to kind of have some ideas, not prescriptions or recipes, but, how to address those questions of worth and value. Yeah. When we know that, I agree, there are lots of us now doing this work, but we're often quite precariously positioned in relation to, the core, the money coming in and, the standard criteria and that kind of thing. So I think the criteria by which we evaluate this work is something I'd like us to think about as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Carol. Jane, you had a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it was connected to the point that has been raised already about unlearning and unteaching, which I think is kind of foundational to what we want to pursue. But how and should and can we build in repositioning ourselves, so we're not the instructor or the teacher, we're not providing the learning situation, but if we really want to work with that idea and practice of collaboration, how do we build in spaces and opportunities for students to present their own provocations and for us to be disrupted and troubled in our business as usual, although our business isn't that usual, but you know what I mean. So it's kind of building a kind of two-way or more than two-way, but the channels of disruption happen multiply and in an ongoing way, and we need to somehow build that into the unstructured structure of the unlearning, unteaching offer that we're trying to develop, if that makes any sense at all.
No, I think that makes a very, very good sense. Yep, I agree. Other thoughts?
And I'm just thinking, Jane, whether we think about, I think we need to be displaced as teachers and disrupted.
Yes, absolutely. And that is going to be the hardest thing, Carol. Like how,
I think it's also about how we bring in other entities, if you like,
Yeah.
as teachers as well. You know, you can be, anything can be a teacher in a way. You know, I learned a lot from my time in the classroom, looking at t-shirts and chairs and stuff like that. So you know, it's kind of what it's not just the unlearning of teaching, it's kind of questioning what the actual mode of teacherliness might be even.
I think that is also a very good idea, to rethink the entities that teach, or the matter that teaches, or yeah. So I think that what Jane brought up was the idea that who are the learners, and how the students could disturb our even temporary roles as inquirers or researchers or teachers. But then I think, Carol, your point of what matter could potentially teach in that class is really fascinating. Natalia, you had thought. And Annika too, yes. Oh, and Roseanne, okay, yes. So Natalia, why don't you start?
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't really meaning to raise my hand yet. I was preparing, but I guess it was my moment because it raised by itself somehow. But so I'm gonna say some things I have to say. I'm calling from Colombia, South America, and I do have an interest in postqualitative research, and I'm also a teacher in informal contexts for some years already online. And I'm planning to develop new courses online in the short term. So this is of all my interest. I'm saying this because, Mirka, you were inviting me at the beginning to say something about me. So this is a dialogue on that topic. And my thoughts. One is to think why the unteachable word is together with this project. Like I will start problematizing why do you think that is unteachable in the first place, and like instead say the relevance and the importance of starting teaching these other concepts and from these other perspectives. So that's one. Another is based on these ideas that you were sharing, like who other entities could be teachers. For me, it is important to first consider how am I as a teacher relating with the world, and what are my relationships and who is teaching me. Because from my perspective, I cannot teach or share what I don't experience myself. And I feel that this is an invitation also for these kinds of teachings to get out of the head. Like this is to say, it is very different to think about the ocean than to doing scuba diving. And like, so it is very different to theorize about something than to actually live it and experience it in a daily basis. So what this makes possible for kinds of teachings. And I wanted also to invite this difference between formal and informal education into the field. And because there are some few awesome experiences. I'm super nerd, so I am all the time studying, and I've been studying a lot lately informal education and like non-orthodox topics online. And I have had great experiences on that. So I will say one invitation will be, as a future wanting to be a teacher online, it's awesome to take this experience as well as being a student online and see what works and what doesn't. And also the ways people learn are so different. So for instance, based in accessibility, I have had these experiences of like receiving classes through video versus only the audio, and having the transcripts, and like how people relate differently with this. And also, instead of only offering material that is rational and intellectual, inviting people for experiencing things, but then those experiences should come from the experience of the teacher themselves. You know, like for instance, if I have a relationship with elderberry and they are a great teacher for me, and I already have ways of relating and receiving their wisdom, then like I could definitely make an invitation for an exercise for my students to relate with elderberry or other trees, you know? So like my point is to take the classroom out of the head and of the theory, and how this can contribute to the academic world, also involving practice as a way of producing thinking, academic thinking. That's all for now.
Thanks so much for sharing, Natalie. There were a lot of good points, and I took notes. I want to address the Unteachable though before we go to, just really quickly before we go to the other raised hands there. So on why I am using Unteachable term, it is to differentiate the way that I interact in these spaces from traditional, conventional knowledges and practices of teaching. So I imagine, and what I do in my classes, I don't transfer knowledge. I am not the teacher. So many of these fundamental teaching theories or practices are questioned in those spaces where, in my case, post-qual is being discussed or experienced or whatever. So that it doesn't mean that I am not there and I'm not interacting with the students, but it means some kind of divorce from and separation from the traditional ways that we conceptualize teaching. And that's all. Okay. Annika?
Yes, thank you. I've heard the word provocation several times, and for me that reference point is Reggio Emilia education. And I know I was speaking to Karen about it, and she mentioned that Karen Berard was interested in Reggio Emilia practices because of the potential that they have for teaching post-qualitative methods. And I wonder what it would mean if an online course was a digital atelier, and what would that look like? And if there are other practices from the Reggio Emilia ways of doing that might be useful for this kind of experiment. I don't know if maybe Teresa or Karen would want to respond to that at some point.
I can do that now.
Do it.
Maybe Teresa maybe as well. I mean, I've written a lot about it, thought a lot about it, practiced it a lot in higher education. I think Reggio Emilia is totally undervalued in higher education as a, you know, of course, it's a pedagogy. It started just after the Second World War and preceded all the, you know, so many approaches that are focusing on other languages. But I think the depth of the philosophy and the way it is a living organism, and it can't be pinned down by one particular theoretical orientation. But I think in particular, for people who don't know about Reggio Emilia, so there's an early childhood education approach, well, early childhood philosophy, in particular about the image of the child, very much different from at definitely the time in which it developed, adjacent to Maria Montessori and a lot of education that was religion-based. But I think what I'm particularly excited about, which you see still very little written about, is how the 100 languages, so there's more than one language, and they've stolen all the others, apart from reading and writing in schools, and then so the 100 and 1,000 more, and it's of course a metaphor. But what I'm particularly keen on is the idea that you start with a provocation and then you use the different languages, but you don't use them, you know, you just bombard them. Oh, let's go and do let's do some drawing, or let's get the paint pots out, or let's do the clay. There's a kind of very clear connection with the changing, or the changing of the languages in order to project forward. So the whole notion of projectazione is one. It's not project work. It pushes forward the project in ways, and in a very performative way, into projects that are completely generated. Well, not completely, but they're generated basically by children's interests. And and we've used partly some of these ideas in higher education, I think very successfully. We've used it in our teacher training, Roseanne and myself and others, and our experience has been extraordinary. You know, when you draw on students' expressive talents and creativities, and it's just extraordinary what students produce. And so, yeah, sorry, that was all very unexpected, but it is quite tragic, actually, I think, how shallow sometimes it has been understood, but also that what has come, you know, after in multiple intelligences and new literacies approaches is actually, you know, there's so much that we can put in conversation with one another and diffract through one another. And I've got the same with philosophy for children. So I've written about diffracting philosophy for children in Reggio Emilia. And I think it's not like, oh, let's use this approach and it's not a tool. It just becomes part of your pedagogy. And I like Barat's notion of, you know, the stingray and the clairvoyance and the disruption of the temporalities, because I think as an educator, you're always, you know, it's never like you're in the now. You're always already in the future and in the past, and you draw, and it's always this big whirlpool of thinking and feeling and deciding what might be more provocative. But I think pedagogy is probably something, and thank you for raising it, Annika, because we've been talking about provocations, and I think probably more than anything else is thinking carefully about the pedagogies that we would like to enact rather than use within those kind of online courses. And Reggio Emilia would be a real inspiration, but there are others too. But I really do think that and I think that's where still for me also the missing peoples in post-humanism. I think we don't look enough to early childhood education and higher education, in how the materiality is always so part of our pedagogies, and you know, it's never far, is it? And how we can really benefit from that, but still very much often treated as the baby of academia, right? Yeah, probably I've said enough. That's Teresa.
Thanks, Karen. Who wants to go next? Rosa and Angelo, and then Jane. I saw your hand too.
Yeah, it's Teresa.
Teresa, do you want to go? Do you want to talk about the Reggio, Teresa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. Thanks, Annika, for bringing up the Atelier. Mirka, I just wanted to maybe mention what the added ingredient from maybe the Reggio, which is interesting, is the insistence on always having more than one teacher in a space. You know,
yes, cool.
That idea of collaboration and the idea of different people bringing different things. Having you know, with Reggio, they decided that the presence of an artist somebody with a particular artistic practice would add and bring something to the inquiry and the research as part of the pedagogy.
That's a really good point. I like that, and the multiplicity of teachers definitely, or facilitators or provocateurs, or however we want to kind of frame it, is a really good point. Thanks for sharing.
Mirka, thank you. I'm just going to, I'm provoked by your provocations that you started with. And so I'm hoping to just share 1 or 2 points. I just want to say that the pandemic has forced something on all of us and on the world in terms of online courses and teaching. So there need to be a careful uncoupling with what that means, because I think of Carol's point about what do classrooms do. They do so much. And actually, when you think of the rhetoric now, they do nothing, because we can just put children in a room and put a screen in front of them, and it's, or whatever it is, or teachers, etc. So I just think that's really something really interesting. And then also just to be a little bit, I suppose people spoke about having fun earlier. I think we're presuming that an online course has anything to do with teaching and learning. I'm just asking. So maybe we shouldn't presume, and I'm teaching and I'm learning what? I know what you mean, but I'm just thinking, for me, I'm really thinking about what that means, this natural presumption that any learning will happen online, any teaching. And then my last I work at the University of Cape Town, and maybe in other people's institutions, I'm considered a new practitioner. So we have this course called the New Academic Practitioners Program, which was very helpful. But then I asked them, have you got an old academic practitioners program? Because, so also thinking about who does the course, who should be doing this course, before presuming we know who needs it. I'm just going to end. But yeah, but thank you for to everybody that I've been learning from today, and just listening with and thinking with. Thanks.
Thanks, Roseanne. Angelo, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Angelo from Italy, and there is hello everyone. And Karin, I think we have to organize something in Reggio Emilia to visit all together this place that I don't know very well. So now I want to know it better. I want to say hello also in particular to Marco Distinto, that texts me there is this evening, this interesting group, and so you have to join. And I was thinking about two things. I do not have any answer to these two things, but one is the idea of Carol again. What this classroom do? What did the classroom do? So I think this is a provocation that we need to work through, to elaborate, to think about with our students. Next February, at the end of February, I start my teaching of the course on qualitative methods. And this year I was thinking that we need to work with the student about the materiality of the classroom, but also to ask them to build another classroom, but really not only in terms of language, but in terms of materiality. And so I want to ask them to bring what they like and do something with what they bring. But also at the same time, perhaps we need to leave the classroom, get off the classroom. So in some way, we need to find a really different space, time, and matter where to teach. And this is the first reflection. The second reflection is more related to the idea of unteaching, but this idea of unteaching, well, I'm a bit scared of this. because well, I feel to enter in a very uncertain space at the same time. And I was thinking about what Latour said, that also in a tempest, in a sea, we need a barrel. So I'm very ambivalent about all these ideas that I like, but at the same time, I'm a bit scared because perhaps at the same time, I have a model that make me feel certain, secure. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Angelo. One more thing I'm going to throw out there for us to, we have had a lot of ideas, and how, Karen, I have some notes, so should I just share with your team, and then maybe we can, with Annika, and we can then collectively build on the notes from today and then make a next step. But one thing I would like just to have just maybe a minute or two to think about. So much of the conversation here at ASU, but also in my kind of a smaller peer circles, has had to do with the future orientation. So teaching in some ways for me is always anticipation of the future. So it is, we are not, ideally, I feel like I am not teaching for today. I am trying to create provocations and experiences for the students in the class that help them to survive the future, but also create future, so that there is this kind of like, maybe it's what I would call futuristic orientation into learning and teaching. And how could we do that, for example, with the existing text? So what would we need to do with the current scholarship that we utilize it in a way that positions students in this space that is becoming the space that they need to be teaching when we are gone, and so on. So skills that are flexible enough and adaptable enough and knowledgeable enough, yet creative enough, so that they can enter these learning spaces of the future.
Can I just come in and say something?
Carol, what did you say?
Can I just come in and say something?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a reflection on what Angelo said, but it also kind of reflects on, you know, the exciting thing that you've just said. I mean, one of the things we ask our students to do, I think, in doing this work is to put themselves into an open space where the usual things that hold them up are got rid of. And I think that, you know, to go back to what Jane said much earlier on in the chat, if we want to create a community of inquirers, that might not be quite the right phrase, but a community, we ourselves have got to be brave enough to put ourselves out there. And I agree, Angelo, that does take risk, and it does require you to move out of that position of the person who knows things, you know, the knowledgeable person who can then dispense knowledge, which is bound up with certain modes of embodied authority. So if we come at that from, how can we create a community of inquirers, which might not be quite the right phrase, that might help us to get over that sense of risk, because we'll all be in a risky space. We'll all be feeling a little bit uncomfortable and without a barrel in the ocean, but kind of learning together. Yeah, I'm losing my thread because it's very late in the day. So I think it connected to what you were saying though, Mirka, in some ways about the only way to kind of bring that desired future, if you like, into practice. Is to kind of throw yourself into it and try and, you know, make it happen in the now, and something, whatever might come out of it, of some usefulness. Although that's a weird word.
Thanks, Carol. Hilary, you had something.
But I'm very aware that in the you know, the reading groups that Karen has started, her kind of background knowledge of philosophy has been kind of immensely helpful. So I'm also wondering about kind of genealogies, you know, how we got to post-qualitative, what is the past in the present, how are the hauntings part of the normativity, you know, how did it create these normative things, and then these normative things continue to haunt the future and our own becomings. So I'm also wondering about the kind of genealogies that help us to understand why post-qualitative. What's at stake, really? You know, what is still there from the past that is affecting the post-qualitative, either negatively or positively.
Yep. Thanks for sharing, Hilary. I think that the hauntings and the genealogies are kind of practices and discourses that are definitely shaping what we are planning to do, but what we also will do. So I think that's good. Thanks for sharing. So I'm aware now we have 5 minutes before we close. So let's make a plan. How are we gonna move forward? What do you would like to, let me just throw out something. I would say that we need to continue this work in a different space and have more frequent or series of meetings coming up. And maybe we could focus each of the meetings into the different aspects of, lack of the better word, curriculum development or whatever we are doing in here. So that maybe one of the first meetings would be about the kind of the core assumptions or kind of expectations for this class, and then to the content and how we're gonna, you know, who are the learners and teachers and, you know, all that stuff. So all these issues. So there is quite a bit of different aspects that were discussed today, but they were more of the mentioned as important things to kind of sort out, but we didn't do the sorting out yet. But I don't know, Karen, what your vision was and your team in terms of what are the next steps? You're muted.
I'm aware that Nicola has got her hand up and Annika has got her hand up, but that will bring us over time. Can I just quickly say that, I mean, the way I would see it is probably what you were just saying is let's continue working on this, which is like constituting a working group. So maybe of the people here in the room, but also we can post it if people are interested in picking up this conversation, that we maybe meet once a month or however you think will be very useful, and just like have a target that by next year we will have another seminar like this, probably around about the same time. Is just to have made a lot of progress. So maybe Annika would be better first, or I don't know, because you probably something
mine
practical?
is just a response about the practical. Because we have the once a week reading group on post-qualitative research, maybe we can link that up to the meetings where certain readings are put forward that prepare for these kinds of discussions.
Yeah, excellent. Which we sort of started to do, but also not do, because it has been a bit of a mess, I have to say. So that's the reading group on Monday. That's our time 4 to 5. But we might just now and again just follow that up to 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, depending on, otherwise it gets very early for you, Mirka.
Yeah, so I can very rarely attend that early. So especially if I need to take the kids to school and so on. So it's going to be tricky.
Yeah. So I don't know what you thought about the practicality of whether there's a particular day or time, or I think probably it's just very good to at least pinpoint one day that we will meet next. It's always so hard to do when we're not in the same room. So that we just say, let's say, I don't know, the end of next month on day X at time X, and then we're just going to take it further. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that what we could do, that people who were in this call Annika, I wonder if you could set up a doodle or some sort of inquiry about the most common shared time, or just propose a couple of times. Let's say, Karen, you were thinking February sometime, towards the end of the February.
Yeah, say in a month's time, when we've recovered from the seminar.
Yeah. And then let's say that the first topic of the session is pedagogical undercurrents, or something that will get us started, kind of like the bigger picture, what we want to accomplish.
Lovely. Nicola, you would like to come in?
Yes, I just thought I'd add a little bit of a summary, but also a provocation that might help for the next meeting. And just an input is that Alison and I are part of the panel tomorrow. And basically, we thought we'd attend this session just to get a better sense of, where things are going and how people are thinking about things. So one of the things, I looked at some of your post-qualitative research, their website, and especially the intro, and how I was very fascinated, by some of the ideas. And I thought, well, is this a course? And maybe that's a provocation. Is this a course? And I think it's come up in, the kinds of relationalities that you're describing, the unlearning. There's a lot of, even in, I think it's the art world, where they talk about, I think it was the 70s, when they couldn't name something, whether it was a musical performance or a piece of art, they would call it a happening. Mm-hmm. So is this a something else? And I was also thinking about, traditional sort of courses have a particular structure, and is that structure something that you want given your theoretical underpinnings? Does it kind of go against it? Jane mentioned community. Is it more about an online community? Is it maybe a form of an uncourse? Because what seems at the heart is really the spirit of experimentation. So I'm very new to the sort of post-qualitative research world, but these are kind of things that I'm hearing. Is it about disruptings, or maybe you have your own word for what these kinds of, if you were having a webinar, webinars, sometimes people expect a particular format, but in your space, and community, it might look different.
Well, I suppose, the whole idea behind, for example, the book series, this part of this collective, is that we say that there is more to say than that, that it's not just disrupting, it's not just an unlearning. There's actually a lot that in the unlearning can be learned and can be taught. But it is how you teach. And I think that also that this doesn't come out of nowhere. There are lots of pedagogies and there are lots of philosophies that are very closely aligned and related to this, especially philosophical ones. So I think there's much more to it than that it's just experimentation. Or so I think that is the work that we need to do. And just to say that the glossary, this is second publication, is actually really sort of, I think, is showing very clearly the kind of provocations, well, these are the texts, but the provocations that we're going to put in place as well that go with it, that can actually give lots of ideas, but it's not prescriptive, but that's something else, right? And I think the series is very much one where we say, well, you know, it is easy to say, or maybe not easy, but there is more that can be said that just let, you know, students drift and supervisors drift into, you know, we can't actually say something specific about this because we can. And I think a lot of it is assumed rather than made explicit. And I think that is our task as educators, to make explicit how we can give that guidance. But thanks for flagging up that session tomorrow, because tomorrow we're starting with swimming, with the swimming workshop that Viv is leading, not only swimming, but also, you know, the theorizing and the presentation around it. And I'm just looking at my notes here. Then we're going to write at 11 o'clock, this is South African time, about writing funding proposals, because it's a good time to start thinking about how we can get really a lot of funding for this. Because, I mean, I know lots of students and supervisors that are just really, really need the support and they're not getting it. Then we do a collaborative writing retreat in the afternoon. And then there is this panel at 5 o'clock South African time that you're part of, Nicola, which is really looking at the ethical dimension. So can we just use our YouTube channel? You know, can we use visual material? How can we source it? You know, these are very, very important discussions that we need to have. So especially people in this group who would like to become part of the working group, I think that's really essential to come to. So that's 5 to 6 tomorrow. And then there's a repeat, well, not really, diffractive engagement with the funding proposal. So that's tomorrow. And then the day after, Jane is going to talk about undoing the academic publishing machine. And there is also, just before we do the book launch, and a returning webinar by Roseanne Reynolds of 2 PhD students who share their experiences of doing post-qual research, and then the book launch, and then we close. So that is a little bit of the plug for the coming days, and just thank you for turning up, and also for the people who've been here a whole day since early this morning. Well, it has been a day and a half, but a very exciting day, and generated so many new ideas, and just thank you for your input and your patience. And good night.